Welcome to Cheapskate. I'm Cameron. This is the completed squat cage, so I thought I'd give you a look at it. We're going to go back in time in a minute and I'll show you me building it. Very cheap. It was about, probably in total about 180 Australian dollars. Quite cheap to build. For those of you who don't know how it works, you have these bars here, which can be moved to another spot up here. If you're doing like a military presses, you can have it in the top spot. If you're doing a squat, you have it here. A couple of different heights depending on how tall you are for the bar to sit. You get underneath and you just come forward like that and you do your squats or whatever. Now if you're doing a really heavy weight and you get down to here and you can't lift it back up, you just drop down and crawl out basically. And you're safe. Everything's good, the bar hasn't landed on you or anything like that. The other thing is you might be lifting and you hurt your back while you're lifting or something like that. Instead of trying to struggle with the bar and injure yourself even more trying to put it on the ground or lift it back up, you can just drop onto here. Same thing goes if you do a knee or something. It allows you to confidently try and do your maximum lift knowing that you're safe. And so yeah, that's the real purpose of them. Anyway, let's have a look and see how we build it. Hello. It's a little low. Hello and welcome to Cheapskate. I'm Cameron and today we're building a squat cage. So I originally was going to do 90 by 90 with this timber. And it was the only 90 by 90 I could get was dressed timber, dressed pine. And it was like $60 a piece. It was just going to end up way too expensive. It was starting to get like $500. So I ended up just going to the sort of structural timber section and getting 90 by 45s, and I'm going to glue them together to make 90 by 90s. These are only about $14 each. So two of them together is about 28, so it's less than half the price basically. Anyway, I got 8 of those. They are 2.4 meters long, which in inches is it's nearly 8 feet, just under 8 foot long, and they are 90 millimeters, which is I think 3.5 inches. Yep. Also for resting the bar on the actual protective bar that we're going to slide in and out, I got this. It's I think it's about 1.5 millimeters thick, the actual metal. And this is also 2.4 meters long, same length. I'm going to cut it in half and we'll use that as the bar that we slide in and out for altering the height of our protective squat cage. I've got enough timber to also allow a bit of bracing and a bit to go across the top and all that. I'll explain that later. These bolts we're going to use for resting the barbell on. They are 200 millimeters long and they are 12 millimeter, which is about half an inch in diameter. And I also had a bunch of these bolts, which I didn't buy, I already had these. These are also 12 millimeter, but they're only 150 millimeters long, which I'm just going to use for joining some of the things together. To make these 90 by 90, I'm going to glue them and then just put a few pine screws through, brass screws, just to sort of hold them together while they're gluing, and then just treat them as single boards at that stage. All of this, all up, cost me $168.22. That's Australian money, so it'll be less if you're in the US. I think this should be all we need to build it, so it's going to be a very cheap squat rack. I'm just marking the 1.8 meters with a pencil, and it's just going to be approximate. I'm actually leaving a little bit extra on purpose. The reason I'm leaving a little bit extra is because the ends of the boards never match up properly. They never saw them straight at the factory. They're always a little bit off. So even though you line these up and you try your best, like I can see the ends of these, they're not quite lined up. They line up on one side, the other side the board sticks out a little bit. So best thing is to glue them and drill them together and then just cut an end off flat at the end, otherwise we might get some rocking. So the other thing I'm going to do now before I glue them is just drill a couple of holes, which I might put a bit further up, which is is where I'm going to put the screws in. One up near this end somewhere, not too far. And that's just, all this is really is just to, at this stage, just to hold the timber together while the glue dries. Now I just put some glue on. Make sure you use a good quality wood glue. It should, in theory, they say, the glue is stronger than the timber, so. So before I started doing this, I got the boards and tried to match them up that when I put them together that it wasn't gaps, and you can always just swap them around until you get the best fit most of the way along. So you can do that. Or also when you're at the hardware store, pick out the straightest boards you can find. It just makes life a lot easier. I might actually drill through the other side now. I'll put a few on the other side. Alright, so the ones behind me are the ones we're using for our 1.8 metre posts, the back posts. This is for the front posts. They're 2.4 metres long, and I'm going to use a pair of 1.2 mils. So basically I'm going to cut it in half. So in this case I'm going to glue it the whole way along and put screws in it the whole way along because we're going to use all of it. Now, so I've marked my halfway point, and the reason I've done that is because I don't want to put your screws right there or really close to it where it'll split. So I'll put the screws in, a little bit away from that. Okay, so this piece is for the 1.2 metre post, the front post. I've decided with drilling the holes and putting the screws in, I'm going to put them off centre and leave a big enough gap in the middle to put the rods through. I don't know which end's going to be the top or the bottom yet, and I want to leave myself options in case I end up changing the height and things. So I'm going to put these screws off centre. So I made a mistake when I ordered this. Well, I didn't order it, I went and bought it. I thought this was 90 by 45, and I think the sticker said 90 by 45, and I'm pretty sure I've paid for 90 by 45, but it's actually 90 by 35. So it's a little smaller, so I've only got 70 millimeters this way, and I've got 90 millimeters this way. So it's a little bit smaller than I thought, which I would have preferred 90, would have been a bit more stable, but it should still be okay. Well, I guess my saw doesn't actually go to 70. It's a little bit less. Tear out. It does feel pretty flat though, so that should be okay. We've got our spare bits for bracing. Check and see if it's stable. Okay, so it balances, stands up by itself. I've got two of these boards left, and they're going to form the base, and I'm going to cut off a couple of bits to form the cross beams. So for the cross beams, the total width of the whole thing is going to be 930 millimeters. So I'm going to cut 930 millimeters off this one, and then 930 millimeters off the other one. One of these will be a rear bar rear on the floor going across. The other one will be on top of the two main posts going across the top of those posts. Alright, so at this stage we should have our two long beams that are 1.8 meters high. Then we should have our two shorter beams that go at the front. They're 1.2 meters high. So there's still, these are the ones where we glued all the stuff together. So they're the thick ones. Then we've got these ones, which is what's left after we cut the 930 off those two posts, which will basically be the bottom of the cage. Then we've got these other two, which are the 930 bits we cut off. One will go across the bottom at the back, and the other one will go across on top of the two posts, holding that all together. And then you should also have these bits, which would have come off these double bits when you cut them. These were the ends that we cut off, which we're going to use for bracing the whole thing to stop it sort of tilting or wobbling or anything like that. So that's pretty much what we should have now, plus the steel pole, which we have to cut in half. You can see there I've marked it with texture. I always use blue when I'm working with metal, because shiny metal, you often get a lot of reflections that are black, you don't get many that are blue, and it just helps to see it. Maybe it's just my eyes. So just getting this started off with a hacksaw blade. It's actually a new blade. Actually, it is a metal blade, isn't it? Yeah, it's for cutting metal. Got it. All right. And so I'll get my file now and just tidy up that end, because sharp ends are dangerous. Not sure if you can see these jagged bits of metal sticking out here. Just get those off. Now, because this is YouTube, I better give a warning. If you're going to be using this as a bar where the barbell will rest on top of this from time to time, or if they drop it, it'll drop onto this. So we want to make sure that it's not too thin a steel. Don't buy like really thin steel, right? So if I get my vernier calipers here, and I just put these on here, it says 1.7, it says at the moment, right? Now, in actual fact, I know this. It says on a sticker that it was 1.5 millimeters thick steel. That's pretty good. I wouldn't go below 1 millimeter. Yeah, I mean, pipe is pretty strong because it's round and all that, and it's going to be going through a slot in it. But even so, you know, depends on how much weight you're going to put on it too. You know, you could even use a solid metal bar if you're going to be doing a lot of weight. I mean, this particular unit probably isn't going to go over 80 kilo. Squats and stuff, so which 2.254 pounds to a kilo, in case you're trying to work it out for okay, so I'm going to have two bolts, one going through this side and one going into this side, and I'm going to stagger them. One will be about sort of here, I'm close to the top, the other one will be down near the bottom. That way, by tightening one and loosening the other sort of thing, I can pull it forward or back or side to side. Anyway, just to make it straight. I don't obviously want the end of the bolt though sticking out here. That's going to sit, because this is going to sit on the ground. This is going to be our ground piece. So I've got to make that sit inside. I'm going to be using a socket to drive that in, to turn that in. This socket is 25, just over 25 millimeters. So I'm going to make a hole about 28 millimeters wide, just to allow a bit of extra, with this, what's called a Forstner bit. Alright, so I've got my pencil line all marked up, all lined up with the board here on the end. Just having a look here to gauge, okay, so that's the center of where I want this thing to go. So I'm just going to put a mark in the center of that. Put another mark over here in about the center of that. So that's where I want them to go. Now I'm just going to use my square here to draw that line the rest of the way down. I'll do the same on that one. You probably can't see this very well, but I'll bring you around and show you before I finish it. And I want one of them to be part of the way down on this side. So let's say there would be good. And do a similar thing on the other side. I just realised I don't have to bring the camera around. I've just taken this from here and put it on top because I'm going to drill down onto it anyway. So these are the two marks I've made. They're the lines we did. Getting pretty close now. The other way we can test it is to put the bolt in. Just make sure. Oh, I can still feel it a tiny bit. If it's sticking out at all, it's going to make the thing unstable and make it rock. So we need to go a bit further down. That's good now. Alright, so now we'll do the same over here. Okay. So there's our shallow holes. Now we need our deep holes done. So we'll just change over to our long, very long drill bit, our spade as it's called, and you can see there's already a hole there made by the Forstner bit. I can just put this in there. Now what I might actually do is put something underneath this so I don't get blowout on the back. I'll show you that. So I just have this bit of scrap particle board which I'm going to put under there. And we might actually get that over here a little bit as well, just so that the timbers underneath are supported as the drill goes through the bottom, in that way helping to stop the timbers at the bottom from blowing out. Okay, so if we look at that, it didn't blow out too badly. Still we've got some chips there, but it's not too bad. Sometimes you get big chunks blow out and that's what you don't want. So that actually looks okay. So we'll drill the other hole now. Anyway, those holes are done now. So the bolts, we'll have to screw these in because I've made the hole smaller than the bolt. It says it's a 12mm bolt, but it's actually about 11.5mm at the thickest point. So I need to make 10mm holes. Yeah, so I'm just going to give these bits of light sand just to knock off any bits that might be poking through and holding the timber unflat. And the reason you don't want you want it to sit flat on here is because if it's not flat, it might actually just tilt it a little bit, which, because the thing's so high, it'll actually tilt a fair bit by the time it gets to the top. Get that one started. And get our other one started. Alright, so we've got both of those holes started and I can now go ahead and drill them. Alright, so now we're just going to do the same for the other side, for the high beam. with both of those sides bolted on, we should ideally have this now. And it's balancing, although it rocks a little bit, but there it is. Looks a bit high because it's higher than the camera. It's a little bit taller than me. It's probably about 1.9 metres at the moment. Well, so it's a fair bit taller than me. And there's a shorter one at the front. So on top you have the baseboard for the other side. I want to make sure obviously I have the struts in the same place so they correspond to each other. So I'll put this on top so I can mark on this where the edges of these ones are. But also at the back, I've just got it's an engineer square. You just need something straight that you can put against the back and make sure the back of the boards are level with each other as close as possible. I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to put the strut on top across the back or actually butt it up on the back. If I butt it up on the back, I need to make sure these are the same level, otherwise we'll have a crooked bit on the back. Okay, so now we're ready for that, so we can get, we might actually be able to use this. Yeah, we can, it just lines up on that. Yeah, so somewhere around there, I'll just put a line there, another line here. I'll do the same on this side. Just going to make it a bit easier when putting the others on. They won't line up exactly, but as long as they're as close as we can get them. I put the hole, it's lined up, it's no good, it's going to hit. So we're just going to take this one out. We've got the glue in there now anyway, and we can whack this in here somewhere later on. Just thought I'd show you that. So once I have them both sides done, I've laid them on top of each other. You can see the bolt in there. So I've basically made the bases flat with each other, so the bases are completely lined up. Don't worry about the rest, just get the bases completely lining up with each other. Once that's done, we can then have a look and see how we're doing. As you can see at the top there, not so hot. And same with this one, not so hot. So the top one, which is going to be the side closest to us, you see it's leaning back there by a fair bit on this, if we just consider it the top one to be the one that's out. And this one, it's leaning forward, so they're both leaning in towards each other. Now partly that can be corrected when we put braces in, because we are going to put braces in. So what we might do actually is, put the braces in before we bother about finishing those bits off. Hi. So when we did the cutting, we had these 4 pieces left over, which we're going to use for bracing. So bracing is, I'm going to put one here and one here on each side. Because we're going to be hooking our barbell on this side of the board, most of the weight's going to be pulling this way. So we just want to have it braced, just to give it a bit more strength against pulling that way. But that will also strengthen it against going that way too, because it'll be holding it there as well. And this one here, same thing, once we have the bar in the middle, if we accidentally drop the weight onto the bar, the weight's going to be pulling down the middle here, so both sides are going to be getting pulled this way. So having a strut this way will strengthen that as well. It'll also help strengthen it a little bit for it going the other way. There shouldn't be as much force going that way though, but it'll strengthen it for that as well. So the easiest way to do it is to make a 45-degree angle, because most saws, circular saws, other saws, have a 45-degree mark on them. Okay, so I now need to mark 45-degree angles on my braces. If you don't have anything that has a 45-degree angle, like I'm going to use this because it's got a 45-degree angle on here, but you can buy pretty cheap squares from the hardware store that have a 45-degree angle on them, or you get a square piece of paper. This is oddball, it's not square, so I'm just going to, if I really was going to be accurate with this, I would measure it first to make sure I'm actually making a square. Okay, so all you have to do with a square is make sure all the sides are the same length, right? Anyway, you can get a square piece of paper, fold it corner to corner, so long as it's square, and you've got yourself your 45-degree angle, and all you would have to do then is put that on an edge like that, and that's 45 degrees, and you just slide it along as long as you keep the bottom against one edge, and then if you want to cut it there, you just cut there, 45-degree angle. So basically that's how it fits in. Now this particular one here is the one that's leaning back that way too far. I need to bring it forward. I've worked out by holding my straight edge spirit level on there. I've worked out by holding this straight how much of a gap there is. So if I leave that amount of gap here, then and attach this side down, then I'll have to pull this forward and tighten that up until it hits that gap. So all I'm doing here now is not go into the bottom. That tells me where it wants to go. Alright, now, get the angle. Want about a 5mm gap. Have I gone through there? No. About a 5mm gap. Yep, that looks about right. That looks about the right position. This is taking longer than I thought it was. I thought I'd be doing this in seconds, but anyway. Whether I actually show you how you can do it on your own. Alright, so you've got to do it on your own. You've got to somehow push it, right? I've got this, basically the beam resting here on this arm of the, actually a treadmill which is standing up at the moment. And I'm just going to stand on this, push it into that, which will push the beam back and then drill it. That's about its limit there. Slip the bit. Okay. All right. So I've got them side by side, and these front two are basically perfectly matched, which is really good. But the back two is a different story. So if I try and get side on for you, they're pretty good at the bottom. They're a match at the bottom, which is great, but they go out at the top. And basically, the one that I tried really hard to push forward and all that has come too far forward. So at this stage, all we should have left is our two pieces of timber and the two metal bars. The bars are going to go across here later on. So one of these is going to go at the back, across the back, and the other one on the top. I want to make sure that both sides are parallel so the whole thing looks square. So I've just measured here, got 750 millimeters from inside to the inside at the front, and it's the same at the back. So I had to move it around a few times to get them even and straight. Now that I've got that, I'm just going to put a single screw through each side of this just to hold them the correct distance apart at this end. I felt something move, so I'm just checking both sides again before I put the second screw in. Okay. Just make sure this is also flush with all the sides. It may end up staying in this position. Okay. So you might remember that when I bought this, I thought these were 45 by 45, which would have equaled 90, which this is 90 here. But we ended up getting 90 by 35s. Anyway, so I'm going to sit this so that the edge here is level with the front, the part where you'll be inside the cage, because that's the most critical part for it to line up with. So I'm just going to put, got that on the edge there, lined up with the front edge. I'm going to put a mark. I'm just lining up the centre of this here so I know where to put my bolts through. And I'm just making a mark at the top, so when I make my mark up here I know where it is. So when I make my mark up here I know where it is. Sorry, camera work. I'm looking at what I'm doing and then the camera goes wandering. So yeah, I've made this mark, which is lined up with the centre of these boards. We're going to drill holes down, so I just need to know where I'm drilling. I'll mark it, then I'll bring it down and drill it. Ow. I was looking straight at it too and still ran into it. The trouble is getting straight. Yeah, it's better. And holding this straight. Alright, so I'm just bringing you up the ladder here so you can see we didn't recess these bolts because we didn't need to, or screws because we didn't need to. So on the bottom we needed to recess them because we had to have a flat bottom, but up here it doesn't really matter, so it's actually better not to recess them up here because you've got more timber now for it. It's a bit of a stronger hole, but they're down tight now. So to finish off the back brace, I'm just going to be using some more of those 2-inch screws or 50mm screws that we had before, because now we're going to lock it in. And 750 I mean. It was around about 740 when I checked before. Now we'll just check about 750. That looks about right. And then a final check just to see, does it look right to the eye? And it looks pretty good from little 12-volt drill is struggling, so I might actually switch to a mains power drill. Alright, now I've got to be careful I don't break my wrist. This will get some kick in it if it jams, which there's a good chance it will jam because we're going through a fair bit of timber. Plus, once we hit the second piece, we might get a jam. We'll see how we go. Whoa! This is a lot more powerful. Hello. Need to widen the hole out. I've got a rasp here and a file. Both of these have a curved side, so I'll use the curved side. I'm just going to use the rasp first. It fits through now, although it's fairly tight. It's not too bad. What I just want to make sure now is that I'm able to get it to the centre, which I can. And now I just want to check that I've got it at the same height. Or the centre of it is going to be the same height as the centre of this one too. Alright, and we'll do the other side now. The first bars are in and done. You can slide them in and out. I want to do one more set of holes higher up, somewhere up about here, for if you're standing up doing sort of military press and stuff, so if you drop the bar it doesn't drop too far. So I'll make another hole up here for that, so the rod can be taken out and put in there. And this time we were using the 32mm spade, but the holes need to be 33.5, or the bar's 33.5, so the hole probably needs to be more like 34, 34.5. I have got this forced to be a bigger one, it's a 35mm. It won't go all the way through, but I might be able to get most of the way through and maybe finish it with a spade. It's just the filing's taking forever, so I'm going to give it a go. We have made our mark at 1,140mm from the bottom, or 1.14 metres if you like. So I'm up to that part now where we put these bolts through. These are long bolts for holding up the barbells. Originally, I remember I thought this was going to be 90mm thick. So I got the bolt, I thought I'd have it on an angle about like that, but now it sticks out the back. I actually wanted to sort of just come to the back and that's it. So I've got some scrap bits of timber, I think they're 19mm thick, which would probably be about there. Don't want that much of an angle. I want about that angle. So I might get a couple of bits of this timber and just glue it on the back here so that it goes through into that. Now, 1 metre, 1.235. 1.235. At 1.3. 80. That angle, which is there. Oop, slipped. Yep, still right. I've put a centre mark here on the lines that I've ruled across. I'm going to get my drill and drill, and I'm just going to eyeball it to get them on that angle. They don't have to be exact. Go straight in first, just so we get a bit of a hole there. Okay. I think we're about right there. Straight this way, yep. I thought I'd film that I am literally cutting up bits of scrap. Alright, so I'll put some glue on here. Oop, that's a lot. It's okay. We want this to be about there. Actually pretty close to this. So about here. And if we move it slightly this way. Wow, that glue is sticking straight away, okay? Now I will pull these rails out as soon as I've done this so they don't get covered in glue. Or get glued in position, even worse. Okay, so there. So I just grabbed the barbell to test out how it fits and everything. And the width, it only just makes it. And I thought, wow. So I just put this one on here, which is why I'm puffing a little bit. Good test for the weighting one. But you see this one's got a fair bit of room between each side. So it's just that other barbell was pretty tight. But yeah, of course, depending on your situation, like I say, you don't want to have them, you probably need a bigger barbell for squats anyway, because you don't want to have your hands, if I had this whole contraption tighter, you really need someone to be able to get your hands in here. You know, if you're a big person, I'm not very wide, so I haven't got that much room to play with, so yeah, you'd have to be careful of that. So other than a lick of paint, I wouldn't mind putting like blue stain or something on this so it doesn't look quite so industrial. I think we're finished. When I had the barbell sitting on here, it was about, I don't know, 50 kilos, whatever it was on there. This stabilised, like I can move these a fair bit now. It's actually because the base is moving. The piece at the bottom rocks, and that's what's making it rock. When the weight's on it, because it's being pushed down, the base flattens out a little bit and it's much more stable, and these kind of didn't move with weight on them. So it seems actually it's a lot more stable than I thought. So I think, yeah, 50 kilos, 100 kilos, you'd be fine. I know My max lift is about 82 kilos or something. Yeah, well, it was. I haven't done any for a while. It's probably less now. Of course, if you're doing, 150 kilos or something, you might want to look at something a bit different. But for most people, by the way, that's 2.254 pounds to a kilo. So yeah, I think you'd be pretty safe with that. Of course, I'm not recommending that you do that because seek expert advice. I'm not an expert. Yeah, I didn't tell you to build it. Don't build it. But it works out way cheaper than buying one. Way cheaper. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and if you found it helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos, consider subscribing to Cheapskate.